Okay, let's talk about February 28th, 2026. It's a day that might have just completely redrawn the map of the Middle East. A joint US Israeli strike hit the very top of the Iranian regime, and it kicked off this chain reaction that has the entire world on edge. We're going to break down exactly what went down, why it happened, and, what could possibly come next after an event this huge.
So you have to understand, this wasn't just some random military strike. This was a coordinated decapitation attempt. The goal was incredibly specific and absolutely devastating. Take out the head of the Iranian state and its entire military command structure in one single massive blow. Initial intel reports, which were later confirmed by sources talking to CBS News, they just paint a picture of total devastation for Iran's leadership. And this number, 40, that's the estimated count of senior officials wiped out in just the opening hours. I mean, this was a targeted removal of a whole generation of the regime's most powerful people. And then came the confirmation that sent shockwaves just everywhere. It came, of all places, via a social media post. President Trump announced that Iran's supreme leader, the guy who had ruled the country with an iron fist since 1989, was dead. And just like that, decades of regional power dynamics were completely thrown out the window.
Now, the Supreme Leader was, of course, the main target, but he definitely wasn't the only one. This whole operation was designed to just dismantle Iran's entire command structure. Just think about the pillars of the regime's power for a second. The head of the super powerful Revolutionary Guard, Major General Mohammad Pakpour, gone. The Supreme Leader's top security advisor, Ali Shamkhani, gone. The defense minister, Amir Nasserzadeh, gone. This wasn't just about taking out the leader. It was about paralyzing the entire state's ability to even react. But the big question is, why now? Right? An attack of this size just doesn't happen in a vacuum. The US and Israel were really quick to give their reasons, which, as you can imagine, stood in total contrast to the furious condemnations coming from Iran and its allies. So on one side, you've got the US perspective. They're saying this was a preemptive strike, that it was necessary to stop Iran from getting a nuclear weapon and to finally end what they called a 47-year-long proxy war. But from Iran's point of view, as their UN ambassador put it, this was nothing less than an unprovoked act of aggression and a war crime. But, while the diplomats were busy debating all the legalities, the region was already blowing up. Iran's response? It wasn't a question of if, but when. And the answer was immediately. Iran's Revolutionary Guard, well, they didn't mince words. They promised the most ferocious offensive operation in their entire history. And this wasn't some empty threat. As they were saying it, their missiles were already in the air. Iran's retaliation was like a strategic shockwave. They didn't just hit back at Israel. No, they went after the nerve center of the U.S. Navy's Fifth Fleet in Bahrain. They hit American bases in Jordan, and then they did something they'd never done before. They fired directly on their rivals in Saudi Arabia, the UAE, and Qatar. It basically turned a two-sided conflict into a regional free-for-all. And while, all these advanced missile defense systems were working overtime, they just couldn't stop everything. The human cost of the retaliation became clear pretty fast, with Israeli emergency services reporting 1 person killed and more than 120 injured in just that first wave of attacks. The fire, though, it wasn't just contained to the battlefield. The ripple effects of this conflict spread almost instantly, shaking global markets and putting the entire world on high alert. The speed of it all is what's really jarring. I mean, think about it. In less than 24 hours, we went from a targeted strike in Tehran to a regional missile war to a vital global shipping lane getting choked off and world leaders just scrambling to prevent a full-blown global crisis. The economic fallout really kicked off right here, in the Strait of Hormuz. Something like a fifth of the world's oil passes through this tiny channel every single day. So when the U.S. Navy put up a maritime warning zone, it was like putting a clamp on a major artery of the global economy. And the warning from U.S. Navy Central Command was just chillingly direct. That one sentence, that they could not guarantee safety, sent absolute panic through global shipping and insurance companies. Because, let's be real, if the most powerful navy in the world can't protect you, global trade just stops. Meanwhile, back in the United States, the federal government basically shifted to a high alert posture. The State Department put out a worldwide travel warning for Americans, security was visibly beefed up in big cities, and intelligence agencies started warning about potential cyber attacks and domestic threats from groups aligned with Iran.
So all of this, it leads us to the most critical question of all. What happens now? With Iran's leadership in total tatters, the future of the entire region is just hanging in the balance. This event literally split the Iranian world in two. On the one hand, the government in Tehran declared 40 days of mourning and swore revenge. But a totally different picture was emerging somewhere else. In Los Angeles, which has a huge Iranian diaspora, people were celebrating in the streets. There were even reports of quiet cheering inside Iran itself, which is just a stark reminder of how divided that country really is.
See, with Khamenei gone, this massive power vacuum has opened up. And while a temporary council is officially in charge, the reality is, with the heads of the military and security services all eliminated, nobody is totally sure who is actually calling the shots. And that kind of uncertainty, it's incredibly dangerous.
And according to military experts, this is just the beginning. Retired Rear Admiral Mark Montgomery predicts that the first strike will be followed by weeks of more air attacks, with a new goal: systematically hunting down and destroying every single one of Iran's remaining missiles and drones.
And so that's where we are. The Middle East is standing at a crossroads. The destruction of Iran's leadership has basically created two possible futures. One is a descent into a devastating regional war. The other is what some are calling a once-in-a-generation opportunity for the Iranian people to forge a new path. The choices made in the next few days and weeks, well, they're going to decide which future becomes our reality.